Hi, this is Bob Costas, and you're listening to the ML Sports Platter.
The ML Sports Platter back with you all over the major platforms like Spotify, Google, Apple, Stitcher, Deezer, and anywhere you get your pods. Download, subscribe, leave feedback, and a 5-star review. We are brought to you by Bryant and Stratton College, the Al and Angus Pub, Stanley Law Offices, and our great friends at CNY Electrical. If you're in and around Central New York, get on over to CNY Electrical, cnyelectrical.com. All of your commercial and residential electrical needs. Sean and his staff are crushing it. CNY Electrical, a proud ML Sports Platter sponsor. Let's go around the bigs. It is MLB.com's Anthony Castrovince, also a correspondent on MLB Network, at Castrovince on Twitter. Castro, welcome.
I'm well, Mike. Thanks for having me back. Nice to be in the flow of baseball again.
No doubt. What can't Ronald Acuna Jr. do?
Yeah, I think I don't know the answer to that question anymore because he doesn't have as much swing and miss in his game as he's had in the past, and it's easy to get distracted by shiny objects, and Juan Soto was really the talk of Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis Jr. were really the talk of the offseason. There's a lot of talk comparing Soto to Ted Williams in terms of just the plate discipline, and that's very accurate. He's incredible. And Fernando Tatis Jr. is one of the most incredible athletes any of us has ever seen on a baseball field, and had that mega contract with the Padres. So, in a way, Acuna kind of got pushed to the side a little bit, which is strange just because, he is such a key member of a really good Braves team that came a win away from the World Series. He didn't have quite as dynamic a year last year as he had in 2019, where he almost had a 40-40 season at 21 years old. So I guess that's part of it. But, clearly you can see now what the fuss is all about. He's been fantastic in the early going.
I've said for a long time a long time during a short career so far, right? But, for well over a year, for 2 years, that Ronald Acuna Jr. is the guy I would take if I were building a team, to go 5 to 7 years and try to win a championship. Look, he's a 5-tool guy. He's an outfielder. He affects the game in a million ways. He's not, an analytic ball player by any stretch of the imagination. He's a wonderful, all-around, versatile, balanced guy, and he's a stud, and everything he does is great, and the impact is amazing. I've said that I actually probably would take him number one to build around. Anthony?
Yeah, I've had that internal debate with myself as well, and with other people, and I've written, particularly with Soto. It's always been easy to compare him and Soto just because they came up around the same time. Sure. They're both in the same division. They both are outfielders, so it's a really tough one. I might lean towards Soto for the long haul, just because I just think that hit tool it just ages so well. That discipline that he has, but there's no doubt that. In terms of doing everything, Acuna's your guy, and what he can do in the base pass to go with, what he can do at the plate. So yeah, he's probably the more dynamic in terms of all the tools, but yeah, it comes down to personal preference, and yeah, I'm sure any team would love to have that choice of which one to have long term.
The Dodgers, they're unstoppable, right?
They really are. The last season was so strange, and it was nice to see them win it because that lent some credibility to a very strange, very short season. I don't think anybody had any doubt that they could have done what they did over the course of in a full 162, as opposed to the sprint that we had. And now they just pick up where they left off. They're all the stronger, obviously in the rotation with Trevor Bauer, and I don't know if you can find a flaw, you let me know because I don't see one.
You can't do anything against these guys. They hit for average, they hit for power. The bullpen looks good. Kershaw's back to looking like a Cy Young guy, and he's like their third best starter at this particular point. And they added Trevor Bauer. It really is absurd. Do you have any issues with the Trevor Bauer situation right now with the junk and going back and forth on it with baseball?
Yeah, that's tricky because the way that came out and has been handled to this point. It certainly seems to point a finger and single out Trevor Bauer when obviously this is something that's rampant in the game and has always been ignored. And so I understand on the one hand, trying to no pun intended, but get a grip on this issue. But I don't think anything. I'd be surprised if anything specifically happened to Trevor Bauer. There's a chain of command issue, a chain of custody issue there with the balls, I just think it's something where one of two things either needs to happen. We need to have a new ball, a tackier ball, which is something they've experimented with in spring training in the past, or just make the umpires enforce the rule. If a team complains, have the umpire check the pitcher and do it that way. But this in terms of discipline, this would not be the way to do it. I think really they're just trying to make it clear that that things are changing in terms of how this will be viewed.
So give me a team that's better than you thought. As we record this about 10, 11, 12 games into the season, we're still pretty young into it, but give me a team you thought was going to be really, really good that's worse than you thought, and a team that maybe was just going to be that's better than you thought. Give me a better, give me a worse.
Well, the that's better for me so far would be the Angels. I know there was a lot of people hyping them up in spring training because Ohtani looked so great, but I don't know. I was a believe it till I see it guy with them, and still to a degree am. But they have done it here early. They've been really good early. I still do have questions about how the pitching is going to hold up, how Ohtani is going to hold up in that particular role. And then a team that's kind of more on the disappointing side of the equation is got to be Oakland. They've played better of late, but they got off to such a slow start. They start out 0-6, and that was a team I picked to win the AL West despite their departures in free agency. But they start slow every year, so it's kind of like maybe we should be used to it by now. But nothing too dramatic on either side of the equation in terms of positive or negative. I just think we're trying to get in the flow of the season here. It's going to be a really interesting year just in terms of how teams do hold up because of the shortened season last year and the effect that can have on pitching. So how teams manage that and how teams does their depth get exposed over the course of 162. That'll be the big storyline as we get a wider body of games.
Anthony Castrovince, MLB.com, contributor, MLB Network, of course, on Twitter, at Castrovince. Just a couple more for you here, Anthony, and make sure you pick up his book, by the way, A Fan's Guide to Baseball Analytics, major bookstores, Amazon.com, and online platforms where books are sold. My feeling on Brian Cashman. You know my feeling on the Yankees. This is just too predictable. And I know you're going to come back at me. Oh, come on, man. I live in Cleveland. You Yankee fans are... I'm not saying you have to win the World Series every year. You know that. I know that. But when you have the resources, you have the international scouting, you've got a guy who's been there for over 2 decades. You have a guy who saw it from Bob Watson and Gene Michael. He was there. He took over. He made some decent trades at the back end of the decade. And he's seen what a winner looks like, how to build a team, how to get guys to pick each other up, that pitching matters more than anything still. This is just so predictable every year with the Yankees. When will the Yankee Twitter's insufferable, so we'll just leave them out. But when are people going to realize on the big scale that the Yankees are really actually not that good? They're a regular season team, 95 to 97 wins. The pitching's going to get taxed. The bullpen's going to end up getting taxed. They can't hit with runners in scoring position, and they're going to get exposed in October. When are the majority going to wake up and understand this?
I guess if they get exposed in October again, and you might be right, Mike, and because the body of work is compiling here to where they haven't been able to take that step that you expect them to take, which is into the World Series. And there have been some puzzling moves, no doubt, in terms of, as you said, the resources and not willing to go the extra mile. What are we doing with the luxury tax threshold? I understand it on one level because I see how the tax can add up and really cripple you long term, but their avoidance of it while still doing the occasional blockbuster has put them in a weird sort of bind where they're a little top heavy. They're top heavy in the rotation. It led them to take gambles elsewhere in the rotation. Now, I am a Clevelander, a small market mindset, to where I just assume that because the Yankees signed Corey Kluber and Jameson Taillon, that all of a sudden those guys are going to be Cy Young winners. They'll put on the pinstripes, and all of a sudden they're
but that doesn't happen much anymore. I mean, those days are long gone.
Yeah, I guess not. Yeah, remember when Vernon Wells all of a sudden showed up?
Aaron Small, Sean Chacon, Vernon Wells. Yeah.
So it hasn't happened to date, and they've got maybe too much relying on those guys. So I think your criticism is very much warranted at this point, because they kind of tied their own hands essentially, and you can't just buy your way to a championship anymore in baseball. It's not how it works. You got to have the strength in your system, and they've shown some strength in their system, but they've also had a lot of inconsistency to go with it.
If you had to buy baseball stock on fun, just fun, how much fun am I going to have watching them? How much fun am I going to have betting them? How much fun am I going to have buying apparel? How much fun am I going to, have watching the face of this team? Who do you buy fun stock in, baseball stock from a fun standpoint in this league? Is it San Diego? Is it the White Sox? I'll tell you what, the Blue Jays might be in that category. Who do you buy stock into from a fun standpoint?
I think you just hit on the big three for me. I put the Padres at the top of that list, because you have an all-world left side of the infield in Tatis and Machado when Tatis is back and healthy, and hopefully what they're saying about him will be true in terms of his recovery from that shoulder injury. But just depth all over the field, exciting young talent too that's integrating into the big leagues. So they've got it all. And the White Sox and Blue Jays can be that. The White Sox are hung up with the Eloy Jimenez injury, hurts them quite a bit in the lineup, and the Blue Jays are without George Springer currently, so they haven't really reached their level offensively yet. But those are three teams that I think I would love to buy stock in, I guess, at this point.
Couple of quick hitters to close. The Indians and the White Sox. I mean, as we record this, what an unbelievable display last night by Shane Bieber and Lucas Giolito. Giolito, a guy who I watched pitch for the Syracuse Chiefs many times, was in that deal with Ronaldo Lopez for Adam Eaton years back. They were dialed up. They were going. Boy, two-parter here. It's just awesome to still see that between guys in a low-scoring game, right, in a pitcher's duel. And as a follow-up to that, how much pressure is Shane Bieber on now that the Indians have had a couple-year fire sale here? Lindor gone, Carrasco gone, Clevenger gone, others are gone. How much pressure is he under?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're under pressure to, maximize the Shane Bieber era and perhaps extend him, but he's 25 years old. He has full arsenal at his disposal. He's just been, it's amazing his development even within the big leagues in terms of throwing harder and expanding his arsenal and just commanding the strike zone with it. As far as, kind of where they're at in general, obviously it's a transition type of team right now, but, that can certainly aid the transition when you have a horse like that at the front end and some other good pieces to go with it. Their top in the rotation has been very good so far, and it was great to see the Bieber and Giolito matchup be everything you wanted it to be. That doesn't happen as much as you want, especially in this era where guys don't go as deep into games, and it's early in the season, so you don't expect to necessarily have Shane Bieber pitching in the ninth inning, but he was so efficient that he was able to do that. Giolito was terrific as well, so that was just a really fun ball game. One of the early highlights of the young season.
All right, final minute. Mike Trout, Angels. You mentioned that team earlier in the interview.
Yeah.
How important is it for baseball to get him into the playoffs?
It's very important, because that's where your legacy is truly built, and that's why we got. It's one thing that Derek Jeter played in New York, but it helps that he played literally the equivalent of a full season. Yep. 160 some games in the postseason. So just the national audience just gets to know you,
Yep.
and that's important. So. I don't know. It's frustrating the way that club has been handled over the years, and just not having enough to get him to the point when you have a player who's on the WAR scale worth 10 wins a year and you can't get his playoffs. It's almost hard to do. So it would be great to see it happen this year.
Yeah, you look at the absurd career stats and what he's putting together, and the MVPs, 3 of them, and the Player of the Year, and the All-Star MVP twice, and 8 Silver Sluggers, a Rookie of the Year, a 500-plus OBP career, 1,200-plus on the OPA. It's absurd. I want to see it big time, and he's off and running. Hope he stays healthy. He's hitting 368 as we record this. Anthony Castrovince, at Castrovince on Twitter, MLB.com, MLB Network contributor. And, of course, go get the book, A Fan's Guide to Baseball Analytics, online where books are sold, and, of course, major bookstores. Castro, thanks as always.
Thank you, Mike. Enjoyed it, man.
Wanted to spend the last bit of the podcast here, the other half of the podcast, talking some NFL Round 1 mock draft stuff, some updated things. Before I do that, a big tip of the cap thank you to Ken's Auto Detailing, Axe Exotic Pets, and our great friends over at Stanley Law Offices. Don't forget, folks, go on over to StanleyLawOffices.com. Check it out. Your personal injury attorneys are here to help you. Stanley Law Offices, together, they'll work to get you the maximum award. This NFL draft is, look, I said it, I think, on a show last week or the week before. Just kind of getting to the point where, like, I'm over... I'm over the breakdowns. I'm over listening to pundits tell me, and you and everybody else in between, oh, this is what Trey Lance can't do. This is what Justin Fields can't do. This is what player XYZ defensive. This is what they can't do. Oh, the film doesn't. Let's talk about what they can do. Remember what they were talking about with Josh Allen? I mean, they talked about 2 things that he could do and 10 things he couldn't. Josh Allen was 1 win away from the Super Bowl last year. Now, again, he has to have that sustainability, and I understand that. But I would rather hear more about what guys can do as opposed to what they can't do. And things have just gotten really interesting since I last did, some NFL mock thoughts as far as round 1. Some updated things where I think guys are going to go. The pro days have happened. There's more film out. More teams are doing more due diligence right now. The interviews have gone on. You listen to more shows. You listen to more insiders. You listen to people who, have talked to people within the walls of a front office. You listen to former GMs. And I'm going to just kind of highlight a few things here that have stood out to me as we're just, I guess a month away or so and change away from the draft. I'm very intrigued by the number 4 spot, because will the Atlanta Falcons, with a new regime, with Arthur Smith and company, are they going to commit to Matt Ryan and say he's still got plenty left in the tank? I think Matt Ryan does have plenty left in the tank. And in fact, he's a guy in the NFL who I have actually felt bad for. I understand he makes money playing a boys game and all the rest. That's not what I'm talking about. They were up 28-3 in the Super Bowl a few years back against the Patriots, and his head coach, Dan Quinn, elected to not run the football after Julio Jones made that spectacular catch along the sidelines. That was the football game. That was it. That should have been the Falcons' Super Bowl, and they could have still been riding that, of course, and prevented Tom Brady and Belichick and company from winning yet another one, right? And, man, poor Brady. He would only have 6 right now. Can you believe that? But I just feel like the Falcons, that window was so open. And now Matt Ryan's considered a guy who, doesn't have a Super Bowl. The Falcons are in a possible rebuild. I mean, all these things have happened because they lost that Super Bowl. I'm not saying the Falcons would have stayed up at the top of the league if they had won the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they would have created a dynasty. It's hard to do that. What we've seen with the Patriots, we're not going to see ever again in our lifetimes, no doubt, but what you look at is at least sustainability in a playoff contender every single year. Look at Seattle. Even with Seattle winning a Super Bowl, having the Legion of Boom, and then having to pay Russell Wilson and all these guys leaving or getting traded away because you had to pay the quarterback. If you look at Seattle since then, they've still been one of the trademark franchises in the NFL. Because they have Pete Carroll, because they have Russell Wilson, because they have a great front office, and because they figure it out and they draft really, really well, and they're just able to put it together, led by Russell Wilson, they show up in the playoffs. They win 11 games, 12 games, 13 games. They show up in the postseason. They win a playoff game. Maybe they lose one. Maybe they get to the NFC Championship game and they lose, but they're there all the time. Atlanta not winning that Super Bowl has created all sorts of havoc. The front office completely got blown up. The head coach gets fired. If they had just run the football and won that Super Bowl, they wouldn't have a number 4 pick right now. We wouldn't be talking about rebuild. We wouldn't be talking about Matt Ryan and a possible Hall of Fame career or not, and the or not part comes in because of no Super Bowl ring. There are just so many other factors that have taken place here because they didn't win that Super Bowl. You know, Julio Jones, do you want to trade him now while he's still got a ton of value and build around Calvin Ridley? That question a couple years ago was absurd to ask. This team that was routinely a Super Bowl contender finally got there. Finally, it was a slam dunk. You're up 28-3 late in the third. You cannot lose that football game. It's the greatest collapse in sports history. It's not even debatable. And I know the Yankees in 2004 with the Red Sox. I know all the collapse. This one, because it's the NFL, the biggest stage, the Super Bowl, was the biggest one. And against arguably the greatest dynasty in sports history. So the Atlanta pick at 4 is really, really, really fascinating to me. I have my eyes on that more than anything, honestly, in the first round, because they could go one of two ways. They could go quarterback, which would then put quarterback at 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the first time ever in the draft. Because it looks like Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones are going 1, 2, 3. Although there have been whispers lately that San Francisco does like Trey Lance a lot. They like the upside. They like the arm. They like the, almost like a little bit of a Josh Allen mode there. They like the blue collar. They like the chip on the shoulder. So we'll see. But, quarterback, the 49ers traded up to number 3 to get a QB. That's it. That's the list, right? But the question becomes, what happens at 4? Does Justin Fields go there? Does Trey Lance go there if he's not picked by the Niners at 3? Or do the Falcons with Arthur Smith and his, crazy, robust offensive thoughts, does he say, to hell with it, we're keeping Matt Ryan, we're keeping Ridley, we're keeping Jones, I love this team, I can work with this thing, I'm an offensive whiz, and I'm going to add another offensive playmaker, probably the best player in this draft, to that offense, and we're just going to go try to outscore and blow people out, and that's Kyle Pitts. That, to me, if you add him in there, you do one of two things. You can keep him with all the other weapons. That maybe frees you up to trade Julio Jones and get defensive assets. The Falcons need a lot of defensive pieces, but to me, between the quarterback decision and the Kyle Pitts decision, and how everything in between with Matt Ryan and Ridley and Julio and that team, is it rebuild, is it not? That, to me, with the new regime and Arthur Smith, the head coach, that is the pick that I'm watching for the most. You go from there. Penei Sewell will probably go at number 5 to the Bengals. I think at this point, a lot of mocks have had him there. If he doesn't go there, expect Jamar Chase to go there from a familiarity standpoint because he played with Joe Burrow in college. And then I just think it's going to be a lot of playmaker type stuff between 5 and or 6, in that range. Kyle Pitts could be if he's not taken by Atlanta. You got a JC playmakers on defense too. By the way, I think Patrick Surtain and JC Horn are playmaker type guys. You got Jamar Chase, you got Devontae Smith, in that area, and then you kind of wiggle into the offensive line, other offensive line linebacker type categories with the likes of. And also Jalen Waddle, by the way, the wide receiver out of Alabama, is another guy who could go maybe like 11 to the Giants. I think the Giants are going to take, for sure. I think they're going to take a playmaker, to help out Daniel Jones. I think they should take a playmaker. I would expect them to take, or a lineman, I think, for the Giants. But if I'm Dave Gettleman, if I'm the Giants, I'm going straight to a Waddle or Devontae Smith. I'm getting a burner for Daniel Jones. There's no doubt. You get Saquon back. It's an offensive game. And then, down the list, you get into that offensive line, as I mentioned, linebacker type area, playmaking defensive players too, like Micah Parsons, edge rushers, maybe the Phillips kid out of Miami. You've got the terrific DB in terms of Greg Newsome II out of Northwestern. You get into those type of players, and so it's gonna be pretty interesting to watch moving forward. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the linebacker out of Notre Dame, has all of a sudden fallen in mocks, And again, we know that a lot of this stuff is a crapshoot as it is. So, those are some of the things I'm looking forward to. I know a lot of people are intrigued in my neck of the woods and on the other podcast I host called Bills Brawl, what Buffalo will do at 30. At this particular point, I'm actually leaning towards corner. I'm leaning towards someone in the secondary, a defensive back. With what they've done in free agency, with Matt Breida coming over, a running back, what they've done going out and finding a punter, bringing the band back together with, Darrell Williams and John Feliciano and Matt Milano. What they've done there, I think that the Bills really want to fill, and Brandon Beane could go any which way. He could trade up, he could trade down. He's a shark. He could go BPA, best player available. He really could. He could add depth to the offensive line. He could be looking at positions. What happens if Tremaine Edmonds doesn't work out? Do we need to go get a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and plug him in for depth and then just turn it over to him, maybe in a year? So these are all questions, obviously, and with the looming contract of Josh Allen coming, you've got a situation where you've got to start to think about other pieces on the football team and how to survive, if people go. Eventually, there will be a day where there is no Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde in the secondary. Do you go get a safety to build depth there? But I think the Bills right now, with the window that they have to try and get back, or get to, I should say, and win a Super Bowl after the year 2020, I think they're going to go secondary. I really do. Whether that's Tyson Campbell, whether that's Greg Newsome II, whether that's somebody else. We've seen, obviously, I think a lot of stock lately has risen for Caleb Farley, the secondary man out of Virginia Tech, a potential shutdown corner. If a couple of those guys go away early, I think J.C. Horn's going to be long gone from South Carolina. Asante Samuel Jr. is a phenomenal fit for the Bills as well. He's a phenomenal fit, for a lot of teams in the draft who need a defensive piece, a guy who can play corner, a guy who can play safety, a guy who can play in man and in zone. So, and he's an athlete out of Florida State who I think is a scheme guy. So the draft is, look, I need this thing to happen now. I'm sick and tired of the mocks. I'm sick and tired of the draft. I'm sick and tired of the hype. I just want it to happen right here, right now. And by the way, one final thought that I do have is the New England Patriots at number 15. You kind of just get the feeling, don't you, after they blew a bunch of money on Jonnu Smith and on Hunter Henry and some defensive pieces, Bill Belichick's just kind of lurking in the woods, isn't he? I mean, he's 69 years old. It's a time where he's probably pissed off from last year and the Patriots not making the playoffs and Tom Brady winning another Super Bowl in Tampa, having fun doing it, getting drunk during the parade, throwing the Super Bowl trophy from one boat to the other. Gronk there winning it. Antonio Brown there winning it, of course. So you have Belichick, who's probably mad. I can't wait to see what he does at 15. But does he go with like a Micah Parsons, defensive leader, captain-type player, a linebacker suited? I mean, we've seen that before with the Winoviches of the world and others who he's drafted. He loves those type of players. Or, if available, because for some reason or another, Justin Fields, who got his clock cleaned against Clemson, hung in there, was the best quarterback without question in the college football playoff, had a great career at Ohio State, was the face of Big Ten football and college football in terms of let's play this season. What are we doing? I mean, does the Big Ten play football even without Justin Fields making a move? I don't think so. I don't. So, having said all that, what happens if Justin Fields drop, like he keeps going and going and dropping and dropping and dropping? Because if he's not taken in the first four, he's not going to be taken for a little while, right? I mean, maybe a Washington trades up to number 8 and gets a quarterback, right? Like maybe, I mean, Carolina's been, kind of rumored to be trading out of that spot at number 8, right? Like that's a possibility. There's no doubt about it. But you think about Justin Fields, if he's not taken, if the first 4 spots are quarterback spots, and it goes Lawrence, Wilson, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, or Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Justin Fields is just left out there. And that could be a perfect fit for New England. He can learn a thing or two about Cam Newton, a guy who's been around the block a little bit. People love Cam in the locker room. He's got Belichick. They went out and spent some money on some weapons, And now he can use the chip on the shoulder thing. Put it this way. Everything's on the table for the New England Patriots at 15. Trade up, trade down, stay where you are, go offense, go defense, go quarterback. It's all on the table. Let's get this let's get this draft going right now. I'm tired of the mocks. I'm tired of listening and talking about it. Let's go. The ML Sports Platter is brought to you by our great friends at Rosie's Corner. If you are in and around Central New York, pizza, wings, pasta, hot and cold subs, and more. Fish Friday every week. Pair it with the mac and cheese or the fries and coleslaw at Rosie's Corner. A big tip of the cap thanks as well to our good friends at Liverpool Physical Therapy, Welch & Company Jewelers, Camilla's Golf Club, and Western New York OTB and Batavia Downs Gaming. Log on to BataviaDownsGaming.com. Check out their concert schedule and all the things they have going on, the terrific restaurants and more. Go play, go stay, go have fun at Batavia Downs Gaming, BataviaDownsGaming.com, and Western New York OTB, proud ML Sports Platter sponsors. Make sure you get to your local OTB throughout the state of New York and Syracuse, Watertown, Rochester, Buffalo, you name it. Go place those bets all racing season with your local OTB, Western New York OTB. Again, ML Sports Platter here all over the major platforms. Download, subscribe, leave feedback, and a 5-star review where you get your podcasts. Hit me on Twitter at Mike L. Sports. And as I always tell you, enjoy the games.